Welcome to the Riley House. Glad you came by. This community of working and African American middle class families has undergone many changes over the years. Now, the Riley House is all that remains.
Hello, my name is Altamise Barnes, and I am the founder and executive director emeritus of the John Gilmore Riley Research Center and Museum. I am standing here at the historic Riley House, and this house is very important to not only the city, but the entire state and nation, based on its history. The Riley House was constructed in 1890 by John Gilmore Riley. Mr. Riley was the original owner, and he had the house constructed for his family. That is important because Mr. Riley was born here in Lynn County, born into slavery, September 24th, 1857. Mr. Riley was born on the Kirksey Plantation, which is just a short 2 blocks from where we now stand. After slavery, he went on to become a great contributor to this community, which you will hear more about when we move inside. The Riley House now is the only African American historic house that is in downtown Tallahassee, that is open to the public on a regular schedule for viewing, taking tours, coming to do research, or whatever will engage the public. This grand house was once the main anchor for an African American community, Smoky Hollow, which is just south of us. Smoky Hollow consisted of over 80 families with their churches, schools, businesses. So the Riley decided about 4 years ago in 2015-16 to document that history, and that brought about Smoky Hollow Village, which is a city park now that is a part of the interpretive program of the John Gilmore Riley Research Center and Museum. And now we are in the historic John G. Riley House. We almost didn't have this opportunity because in the 1970s, with new governmental officials coming in, they were not aware of the rich history of not only this house, but the owner. Luckily, there were people who had benefited from Mr. Riley's contributions, and so that group came together and established the John Gilmore Riley Foundation. The city had plans to demolish this house and put an electric substation on the site, but these individuals raised the $95,000 that was required to pay off the back taxes and bought this house back from the city. And the rest is history. We are here today to experience this history because of those individuals who gave their all to see that it not be lost. Now, as we enter the room over here, this room during the Riley years was the parlor. We call it today the living room, but it was the parlor. Most of the furniture that you see in here now are representative of the periods of Mr. Riley's life, born in 1857 up through 1954. The reason for that is because the house went abandoned for about 10 or 12 years, and people came in and removed much, all really, of the original furniture. One thing that is very noted about this room back in the day, that there was a piano, because Mr. Riley's daughter Sarah taught piano lessons here, and the lessons were given here in the parlor. You will note that we do have these old school desks there, and that is because Mr. Riley gave most of his life, majority of his life, to the field of education. He was the principal of the first African American school, that was Lincoln High School, built in 1869. And Lincoln was established to provide an education for newly freed slaves. So that is the old-fashioned desk. And then we have in the case in front of you replicas of what the first one-room Negro schoolhouses in Lynn County looked like. This was the old Jones School and the old Stevens School. These schools were built on the 72 plantations that once existed in Lynn County. There were 52 one-room Negro schools. So we are very happy to have these replicas that have been donated to us by Mr. Hunter Hill. The other artifacts, there's another school desk where children would sit in schools that would date to the 40s and 50s period. We have the marble top tables. Mr. Riley was a very enterprising person. He also loved nice things. So the furnishing in his house consisted also of some of the best of the period. You will note the high ceilings in this room, but remember we said it was constructed in 1890. So many of the houses today are built with the high ceilings. So here again, history repeats itself, which is so important for us to remember and cherish and hold on to places like the Riley House. Okay, that was the parlor. Now we go into what was the dining room. In this room, as you know, there is no original furniture, but again, we have artifacts and objects that would be representative of the period of Mr. Riley's life. On the walls, we have legacy and learning with some of the items from his lifetime and the way things look today. This is an original historical art exhibit, and that is what this room is used for today. Here we have the old wooden stove, which was the kind of stove that the Riley family used. We have artifacts in the fireplace, and you will note in this house, every room had a fireplace. We have the wood pieces and some of the items, the farm items, the tools, and the items that were used with the fireplace. The smoothing iron on the mantelpiece was the way that the family ironed the clothes, and those are very heavy. The children get a laugh out of it when we have them lift one of those irons up. In the case, we have some of the kind of dishes, the china, that was used by the Riley family for the meals that they served in this house. The furniture, the love seats, the vintage furniture are, again, pieces that the Riley family would have used as a middle-class family living in this house. And so, in this room, many meetings were held with Mr. Riley and distinguished people from Florida A&M University, as well as white businessmen like George Lewis and Mr. Brokaw, because that was the Riley reach. He was a statesman in this community. So this is where many of the meals were served, family and friends and people who were working the various projects with John Riley. Now this is a very special room in the house, special to me and many of the visitors who come here, because this was Mr. Riley's private office. No one could come in this office except Mr. Riley. He had a nephew, according to one of his great nieces who came up and shared the story, that he really cared a lot about, and he would let that child come in the office with him at times. But when you consider that Mr. Riley was secretary of the NAACP, he was Grand High Priest of the Royal Masons of Florida, this Riley House was known as a haven when a black male in particular got into trouble because of Jim Crow lynchings or what have you. They knew if they could make their way to the Riley house, that Mr. Riley would work with the Masons to get that person out of the community until they could safely work the person back in. And meanwhile, he and the Masons would take care of the family. So there were many reasons that this room needed to stay locked. So in 2010, we decided to bring Mr. Riley back home to his office. And inside, he's seated and he gives statements or quotes or periods in history dialogue that represent the 97 years that he lived here in Tallahassee. So we have the privilege today to go in and listen and see John Gilmore Riley.
Good day. My time is spent reading and reflecting on where we've been and where we seem to be going as a people. Given my years of experience, speculations, and occupation, I now firmly believe that everyone needs to have a sense of heritage. If you know your roots, you have a certain kind of pride. If you don't know your roots, people can tell you anything and convince you of its truthfulness. If you are informed, and this is true for any race, the greater chance that you will respect one another. This community of working and African American middle class families has undergone many changes over the years. In 1904, there were 5 houses in this block, owned by black men. Now, the Riley House is all that remains.
And this is the last room on the bottom floor. Upstairs were the sleeping rooms. What we use this room for today is our gift shop. The Riley House is known for its research and publications, so we have over 24 original research publications, documentaries, perhaps more. And this room at one time was not here because, as you will see, the wall ended right across from where I am. But as Mr. Riley aged to the point where it was more difficult for him to make the 15 stairs from the bottom floor to the sleeping rooms upstairs, this was added, and this is where he spent the last 3 or 4 years of his life, sleeping in this room. So that is the historical piece of what is now the gift shop. The city of Tallahassee felt it very important to preserve this legacy, and we are happy now to be a part of the city of Tallahassee. And in addition to the Riley House, we are also, under the city, a part of Smoky Hollow Village, having led the project to do the research that ended with Smoky Hollow Village as a city park. Now we are in Smoky Hollow Village, which is a City of Tallahassee commemorative park. We talked earlier about Smoky Hollow and the families that once lived here. When we embarked upon this project, there was a challenge because the former residents did not feel good about the way that they were displaced. However, once it was made known to them, hey, this is an opportunity for you to tell your story, to tell the story of your parents, your ancestors, and what all they contributed to this community, it changed. And out of that grew the park. Most of the houses were shotgun houses, so that's what you see here in the back, the framework of what would have been a shotgun house. There are 3 of them. And then we have pillars at the beginning of each that tells the story, the names of the families, the businesses, the churches, commercial, everything that was Smoky Hollow. The pecan trees, the fig trees, the lime trees, those vegetation, the flowers, everything is represented here in this park. And finally, the National Park Service took interest in this project because they said this was the first time that a family that was eminent domain, or a community that was eminent domain, had the residents come back to tell the story. So we produced 2 publications, one of them through National Park Service, and that can be found by Googling the Library of Congress, Smoky Hollow Village, to get the full history of the Smoky Hollow community.